I am here with two of the coolest bad guys in outer space. They were both system lords.
Outer space.
The first and the last, and I'm being strangled by both of them. Peter Williams and Cliff Simon. Welcome to Nerdzilla.
I'm Cliff Simon.
And I'm Peter. Nice to be here. Thank you.
So I think this is fantastic because, I mean, the system lords were just awesome dudes, you would agree.
Yeah, absolutely, except the last one.
Well, see, you were the first.
I was the first, and I was awesome applies.
But you were the last, Cliff, which meant that you sort of had the benefit of all the others before you.
Well, yeah, I mean, you could say I learned from them. And then I just cut his head off. And it's like, that's what you got to do.
Well, simply, I mean, who was the best system lord?
Baal, of course.
Because, argue your case.
He was the funniest. You got to admit, he was the funniest.
Absolutely.
He was the best. He was the best dressed, right?
Stylish.
He liked the ladies. That started with Osiris. What else can I say?
You don't need to say anything else. Who was the best system lord?
Well, of course, that would be Apophis. First of all, it starts with an A, so it comes ahead of Baal in the alphabet.
Alphabetically, you win.
Alphabetically, at the very least. At the very least, and I do think that I taught Baal everything he knows about the ladies. I can't disagree that he was very successful with the ladies, but he did have a blueprint to follow.
You didn't get a funky suit. I mean, you got some pretty out there outfits.
I got several funky suits. It depends on your definition of funky, my friend. Yeah. I grew up in the disco era.
You did indeed.
So you could probably say Apophis was the disco baddie.
The disco queen. Them's fighting words. Yeah. But you got to wear a very stylish suit and tie quite a lot.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, I put on some real suits for the one episode, which is fantastic, which I asked them if I could keep, and they said no, of course.
Really?
Yeah, because one of the producers wanted them, and I was like, but dude, you're this big, and those suits are tailor-made for me. How are they going to fit you?
That's a good point.
But I got to keep the boots from Continuum, which is very cool.
They were fantastic. Now, did you love the fact that Baal cloned himself all those times because it meant it was really hard to write you out of the show?
Yeah, exactly. And people ask me if I got 22 paychecks. Yes, I got 22 paychecks for 22 clones.
You should have thought of that. Why didn't you think of that?
Actually, I did, but they had to debate it for several seasons, and then they decided to implement it for Baal. But I'm reaping the benefits now by getting invited to all these conventions.
Indeed, and Apophis was too awesome to be cloned. He was actually possibly unclonable.
I would certainly say he was unique. He was special.
So getting back to
special,
special, yeah. Getting back to acting on the show, I mean, was playing a system lord, was it basically licensed to chew scenery because you had to be over the top? You couldn't be subtle.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, playing the villain. For me personally, I love it because you have so much more freedom playing the villain as opposed to playing the hero. And nobody can tell you how to play the villain. I never once on Stargate had anyone come to me and say, Cliff, you can't say that. And not once. And then eventually the writers started writing for me the humor that I wanted to bring into it. I tried to make him more human. That's why in the beginning Osiris walked in. Of course, she's got long legs up to here. I looked at her. I slouched down in my chair and I looked and I could hear the giggles, and I thought, okay, this has got to be the character, he's got to be. I wanted to make him human. Let the dialogue make him a bad guy,
What about you, Peter? It was just a great fun to be over the top.
Certainly, but at the beginning, Stargate was, I guess it was probably conceived as a two-dimensional cartoon, and Apophis remains enshrined in that sort of categorization. I didn't mind it though. It was awfully fun to play.
Unlike Cliff, you had the movie to sort of at least base things on, because by the time you were on the show, of course, Cliff, the show was well established. Did you watch the Stargate movie, the feature film?
I did, as a matter of fact. And to tell you the honest truth, the Stargate movie was my introduction to the franchise, and it was what got me hooked on the actual storyline. I enjoyed the movie very much, if you don't count the last 15 minutes where I think it really fell apart. One of the reasons I think I got the part of Apophis in the first place was because I bear a passing physical resemblance to Jay Davidson, who played Ra in the movie. In fact, occasionally people call me Ra on the street, and
does that upset you?
Totally, it drives me bananas.
So you like eyes glow green, and you're like, do some bad to them?
Well, no, I just drop the tone of my voice a little bit just to make sure that I'm differentiated from the extremely effeminate portrayal of Ra in the movie.
At least I don't think that you're in the crying game.
No, they don't. That's for sure. I escaped that one.
Can either of you do the spooky gold voice?
No, I can't.
It's
No,
pretty
they
close.
flash that. It's like, yeah, I mean, I wish I could do it, but no, I don't have that kind of voice. Maybe Gary Chalk as Optimus Prime. He also does that.
He's a very good mimic at the best of times. Anyway, what I was told when I was doing that voice. Well, first of all, you're right. It's flanged. We don't do the voice, but the best way to present it to the people in post production is to deliver it in a monotone delivery and with not a lot of variation in the octaves in your voice. And a couple of times I was I was told we have to re-record that because it's not going to work for the guys in the flanging studio. The
flanging department.
The flanging department. It's not going to work for the flanging department. So can we do that again? And monotone delivery, please. So sometimes it was a very by rote sort of process, you know.
And actually, that in the beginning, I didn't even know they were going to do that to my voice. I didn't know at all. And
Had you not paid attention before then?
No, I didn't either.
No, I hadn't really watched the series, but I didn't know. Nobody told me. And then I actually saw the first episode, and I was like, wow, listen to that voice. And then after that, because being South African, we tend to speak very quickly. What I had to do now that I knew that they were doing that to my voice, I had to slow down the way I was speaking and speak more monotone, because when you speak very fast and they flange it, I actually couldn't hear what I was saying, and I was like, no, that's not right, you know. So I had to adjust for that. But yeah, it was very interesting. And then, of course, slowly towards the end, they got rid of it again.
That's right, they did too. Yeah, I was disappointed with that. I thought funny voice is always good if you're going, you know, OTT villain.
Well, just like he didn't watch Stargate in the beginning, I didn't watch it at the end, so I wasn't really sure what was going on. But I must say, though, the tendency for South Africans to speak quickly is diametrically opposed to the tendency of Jamaicans to speak slowly, and so they must have had a field day with that at some point.
I mean, have you guys, either of you, got any good Richard Dean Anderson stories? Because we ask everybody who's been on Stargate.
Yes, you know what? Richard once, I think it was maybe my third episode. I was standing at the gate waiting for him. Exactly, I was standing with my arms folded, and it was action. The scene started, and he had the first line of dialogue. So I was waiting and waiting. The camera's on me, and I started doing this with my fingers, and eventually Martin Wood jumped in and started reading Richard's dialogue, and I just went like, Martin, what are you doing? I was cut. Where's Richard? Richard was in another studio because the studio, they switched the aircon off, the air conditioner, and he was hot. So he just didn't bother coming in.
Oh, just don't turn up.
Yeah, and then he comes walking in, you know, Richard, he's like, hey, all right, let's shoot. But he could do that because, you know, he was a producer on the show. Yeah. So he could get away with that. But I was just laughing. And Martin actually thought that I would just carry on doing the scene without Richard. I couldn't because I started laughing. But that was Richard. I mean, he was just so laid back and cool, you know. But I know he did it as a joke for me because it was one of my second or third scene with him. So
newbie thing, yeah. Where of course, when you were on the show, Peter, it was at the beginning. So even for Richard, it was a relatively. I mean, he was not as massive as he became at the end. What was he like?
That's absolutely correct. But you must remember that Richard Dean Anderson is Richard Dean Anderson, and he has been, a fixture on our television sets for many a decade before Stargate came along. I don't have a particular funny story of Richard Dean Anderson on set, but I did run into him walking his dogs on a beach in Vancouver at one point, and we drew quite the crowd standing there talking. He's a man with very rapid-fire, witty repartee, and once we had the crowd around us, he went into his shtick, and it was beautiful to be a part of it.
Do you think people were just saying, "Well, why is Colonel O'Neill talking to Apophis on a beach with a dog?" That makes no sense to me.
We both had dogs. We were out walking our dogs. Yeah, we both had dogs. And I think that's one of the reasons he stopped, because he was a dog lover. He had a dog that he was very attached to at that point. And So did I, as a matter of fact. And he wasn't a man who given to idle chit chat. So I was really quite surprised that he actually stopped and talked to me for as long as he did.
Fantastic. Look, I'm going to call the Battle of the System Lords, Apophis versus Baal, a draw, because I think that's fair. I think you're both awesome. I think you both
deserve to live to fight another day.
Yeah, I agree. Yep.
Peter Williams and Cliff Simon, thank you so much for being on Nerdzilla.
Thank you, guys. You're welcome.
And as you can see, I've glued my head back on.
Cheers, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks a lot, man.